Enough protein powder in your pancakes?
Not enough to sustain you. Wait, what?
Huh?
Hey everyone, my name is Zach. I'm a 22-year-old competitive boulderer from Canada, currently living near Frankfurt, Germany. Welcome back to the COMPCLIMB training series, where I record all of my training, provide in-depth analysis of every session, and just chat about climbing with an emphasis on competition. Today we're back at Studio Bloc, and ever since our first boulder session back after rest week, where I tried this boulder, I could not wait to get back to it. I've been thinking about it all, the endurance and workout day that we had and the rest day, and I was just thinking about beta, and it was kind of one of those boulders that invades your dreams and keeps you up at night. I was definitely thinking about all sorts of beta that I can try, which is going to be very evident by my attempts today on this boulder. I end up trying 1,000 different things, and that's kind of a cool thing about this boulder as well. And it almost feels like sort of like an outdoor style project because there's just so much beta on this boulder. I swear that's almost the hardest thing about this boulder is not even just the physicality, but the fact that there's just so many different things to try, and they all feel so similar, and it's really hard to pick one. That can be the same sort of thing with comp style boulders as well, but this boulder just particularly is just a million different things to try. And so as you can see from my first attempt, I was thinking about this one bit of beta where when I was sort of theorizing it in my head, I had this is the first time I tried it, but when I was sort of theorizing it, I thought that it could just totally unlock the boulder, and then maybe I would be able to send it really fast, and that would just is simply to cross between these two flat holds where I've been trying to sort of take the two Gastons and do this super difficult foot match on this foothold that I am stepping on my left right now. And it just, the holds are really bad, and it requires so much tension. And the hardest part about it is the foothold is super slippery. So it just feels as I'm bringing my right foot in, the left foot feels like it's slipping the entire time. And that what makes that foot match really hard. So after kind of being a little bit disappointed that my sort of revolutionary cross beta wouldn't work out, I realized that this boulder is just going to be, there's no trick to it. I already have all my beta, and I'm just going to have to try really hard to get the send, and I'm just going to have to really maximize my efficiency through the beginning in order to have enough energy to do this super tensiony foot match at the end. So you can see, is my first ground try of the day, and already I stick the hardest, the crux move on the boulder, and I'm feeling good, I'm feeling psyched. But then the pump starts kicking in. This boulder, I was counting it, it's almost 17 moves or something. It's probably 16, 17 moves, and I just didn't have enough sort of I wasn't feeling loose enough and relaxed enough and confident to do that foot match. Something that has always stuck with me, for those of you who've seen the Lapner Project, the sort of documentary that Nale Huktaifal did, where he was talking about how he on the Sengo he was too nervous and too caught up in his head and just too almost jittery when he finally stuck all the cruxes, and he was just at the end, and he had a beta planned for this where he didn't have to put his foot on the wall. He just campused because he knew that if you got too nervous, then all of a sudden his body wouldn't be loose enough and relaxed enough to be able to exert the proper amount of tension on this bad foothold to do the ending sequence like he normally does it. He said that he had to sort of come up with this plan to do a campus move if he could tell that his body wasn't loose enough. And that always stuck with me after hearing that when I watched that documentary. And it's something that I always think about. It's you almost can't fake it. I find that once you're up there and you start getting nervous, you can try and calm yourself down, and it's always a battle, but sometimes your body just gets too nervous and too tense, and then all of a sudden you can't sort of use a foothold in it a normal comfortable way that you would do if you had no pressure. So I was kind of experiencing that when I was trying to match this foothold when I was getting to the end of my ground tries. And then as you can see on my last couple of tries, I found this new sort of beta by accident, and this is one of the 50 different things I'm going to try in this boulder. Where once I have this sort of the best of all these flat holds, I reached back down to the crimp, the thumb catch of the crimpy pinch that we're grabbing, and in order to try and stick the toe hook out. And when I was trying that move individually, it felt actually quite good, and I thought that this would be a better beta. It just felt there was less sort of tension and less sort of opportunity for my sort of nerves to take over, and then all of a sudden I won't be able to exert the right amount of tension on this foot. And this way, it's more in the hands, and then I just have to sort of swing my leg out in order to snag this toe hook. But I think this is a ground try here. I'm going for this beta, and what happens is I get so pumped by this point, and this flat hold that I'm grabbing with my right hand is pretty decent, and I'm feel strong enough to hold it. But then as soon as I come down to this crimp, all of a sudden the pump just kicks in, and I can't sort of hold hard enough in order to swing my leg out. This like power endurance is like not necessarily my forte. So I think the nature of this boulder just being so long is really challenging for me. So all of a sudden I started to think that beta was not going to make it good. And I was also realizing that I really need to find an efficient way through this beginning in order to have enough energy. And that's often one of my strengths as a climber is I'm really good at like just sort of connecting a lot of moves and being super efficient through the beginning of a boulder so that I have enough energy to do a crux at the end. And so here I am trying to find a better way to do the beginning to try and save some energy. And so we tried this beta on our first session on this boulder where I come into the thumb catch of the crimp pinch and sort of bump all the way up to the flat hold. And I never stuck it like that though. And I kind of ruled it out early on when I wasn't able to stick it. But I think that was just like me not being super like at my maximum fitness on my first session back after rest week. Like that was literally our first day back after rest week. It was my second session, but it was still the first day. And so I kind of was thinking to myself, maybe today I'll be feeling strong enough to do that beta. And I was able to, but I'm not really sure. Like that move is probably like the big span over is probably easier. Okay, actually here, let me talk about this first before I just keep talking about that. This is the beta that I really figured out is going to be the best for me in order to do the Sengo, which is going to be to have my Gastons, and instead of doing the foot match and then snaking the toe hook out, I find that it's actually feels a bit more secure to go right toe hook under on like just kind of the volume. It's not the best toe hook, but it's like just enough so that I can match my left toe hook where my right toe hook is, and then bring the right foot on top. Instead of matching on the foothold, I sort of match as a toe hook on the volume. And then this gave me a bit of motivation now. I thought I had all my beta to connect together. I'm still going to go for this big span out, the span is definitely easier than sort of this backwards move that I've been doing. But then I was realizing that this come in, like the campus down come in is like, it's not gonna, like the span and the campus down come in collectively is harder than just doing the sort of backwards move, which is probably individually harder than both of those moves. And then as you can see, so this little thumb catch that I'm grabbing over and over again on this pinch is very sharp. And by doing the big span move, it also puts a lot of pressure on this finger, and I split my tip. It really sucks. I hate split tips. Of course, everybody hates split tips, and this is not a revolutionary thing to say, but I hate splits. It's just so demoralizing to me, even to have one tip that has split and then I have to tape it. Oh man, I used to have really bad skin in the past where I would get splits all the time, and I've sort of developed like a sanding routine that I have to do after every session in order to prevent this. And so splits are sort of like just traumatizing to me. There was like a year in my life where I was like taping over 60% of my fingers before every session because I suffered from chronic splits due to like super thick skin. And at this point I taped up this finger a lot in order to keep trying this. But I'll probably make a video about this, honestly, like sometime in the future, like going way in depth, because this is a whole story, honestly, and sort of something that's unique to me is like when I say I had bad skin, like I didn't just have bad skin, I had like probably some of the worst skin in the world. I lost the pictures of what my fingers look like in their like at the peak of their worstness, but my splits were just out of control. They were like finger injuries on probably 6 fingers between my 2 hands. I had these massive splits that were like massive cuts that would just hurt to like anytime that I was like bending my fingers back and I was ripping open these splits. It just felt like a finger injury, and that was like a really dark phase, honestly, in my climbing career where this is probably one of the first times I wanted to like quit climbing because of how bad they were, and I really had to talk to some finger specialists and some doctors and like really figure out a way to combat my splits. And part of it was sanding my skin. Now I have like some sandpaper that I sand my skin after every session. So anyway, we couldn't send the Studio Bloc project today. I think that at the end of this session though, I really figured out all my beta. First, I'll quickly pause and say that I was trying this boulder, obviously, that Maddie was trying yesterday. I realized I hadn't gotten any yet, and it was really hard. And I found that I was so exhausted from all of the tries that I was putting on the black one. I was like really out of breath by the end of it, and my butt, like I was getting so pumped after every try, and I was just like using all my energy. I found that I actually didn't have enough energy and like high, like fast twitch muscle power to do that run. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna save this for another day. I can tell myself I'm not really able to like sort of run and jump at my best capabilities right now, and so I'll save this boulder for another day. And so I went and I wanted to try this green slab that we haven't tried since like a month ago or something. I just put like a few attempts on it and I haven't gotten back to it yet. And so I wanted to like sort of really work it in depth today. But yeah, I think that I finally figured out all the beta, like the way that I'll probably go about it, the black boulder on my send attempts, which is that I sort of ruled out the big span. I don't like that. It's too tiring to do the big span and then to come in and then to do that heel hook to go up to the flat hold, like where my left hand was, is also like super hard. There's a lot of tension required. So I think I have to do the backwards way is sort of the most efficient, because then when you swing your you swing your left foot back, it's already on the foothold, and then you can put your right toe hook right away, and it's the most efficient. And then I think that just the key to setting that boulder is going to be to when I have my gastons, to do my right toe hook, left toe hook, and then right foot back on top of the foothold rather than do a foot match. And that's the key. And then obviously just feel super good and like feel fresh. And it's probably going to get to the point now where it's like when I go and try that boulder in future sessions, I'll only be putting like 1 or 2 or 3 attempts on it at a time, because the pump really starts to compound. And I found that I was just getting really pumped after giving a lot of ground tries, and then all of a sudden you hit a point where you're just like, okay, I know I can't send this boulder anymore, and I'm sort of just working it in order to practice it so I can send it later. But that boulder, oh my god, it's so awesome. I'm having so much fun working it. It is like, usually I don't love long boulders, but this one is a lot of fun. And Eric, thank you a lot to Eric for sending me such an awesome project. I bet I can do it next session. Usually I can have a pretty good idea of when a boulder is going to go, and next session I think we'll be able to take it down. That being said, it's going to be a while before we have another boulder session, because I'm going to take like a couple rest days before this comp coming up in a few days. And then we have like some other fun videos to shoot right after the comp, and then it'll be like back to bouldering. But yeah, I'll talk more about that later when it happens. So anyway, we are trying this boulder, this green slab. I tried this boulder a little bit like a month ago, and I called it like the impossible slab because I couldn't do a single move on it. But that being said, that was sort of at the end of my session where I just tried it for 10 minutes. So today was going to be the challenge to like really see if I could figure out this boulder and like use all my slab climbing skills, like really put them to the test and use my maximum slab effort. And so I'd seen Maddie try this boulder a little bit on my rest day yesterday when I was hanging out with her at the gym. And she was sort of getting stuck at the same spot I was. She was able to get her left foot on this green foothold, but it just felt so impossible to like balance on it with no hands and then do a foot match, which is sort of seems like the obvious sequence. It sort of seems like you're supposed to balance on this foothold with your left and then do a foot match, maybe like grab the volume or something, and then step out to this triangle and then go over to the left. But we could not do the foot match for the life of us. There was no way we could like even crimp this volume or like go down low and then do a foot match. We just could not do it. So we resorted to this. We said like, so at Studio Bloc, all the volumes are in, like that's sort of the rule, like all the gray volumes are in. That being said though, you can usually tell when like a volume is, you could use a volume on a climb, but it's like the setters weren't necessarily intending you to use it. And if you use it, it's sort of like kind of lame. But this volume down low, it was really like, I can't tell if it was actually meant to be used or not. Because the sequence that I find here, you can see where I'm like pressing and going down low and sort of using the volume as like a checkpoint, so I can like do my foot matching there, and then I can bring my right foot up to the foothold. It definitely doesn't seem like the setter's intended sequence. It definitely seems like sort of a break. But that being said, this is actually still a really cool sequence, and I enjoyed sort of working on this like really funky sequence that's a bit contrived, and I don't think you would necessarily see this in a World Cup. It's like really kind of weird where I'm like pressing on this volume to match, and then you see I have to like reach over to this volume and shimmy my foot down low. It's like not a really natural movement, and it's like it's sort of like just a bit contrived. But basically at this point I conceded that there's no world in which I was going to be able to match my foot on that foothold and like do it the more like sort of natural looking way. And so I said, I'm just going to try this version of the boulder. Like even if this is not necessarily what the boulder was supposed to be, this is just the only way I'm ever going to do it, especially because since we're not going to have a boulder session in a while, I think this will probably be getting taken down like after we're done with it. So this is probably going to be my last chance to try this boulder. So I just said, okay, let's see if I can send this boulder using this low volume. And it actually ends up being like I said, like a really cool sequence. And it's like quite a bad volume. Like all these footholds are quite bad, but this sort of like beige part of the wall is like I was mentioning before on like one of the other walls at Studio Bloc, it's kind of like a super slab. So it's much more slab than it looks. Otherwise, like how am I even standing on these super slopey volumes, right? but yeah, that is really helpful. And then as you can see, another really helpful thing on this boulder that I'm doing a whole bunch, as you can notice, is this sort of full foot position that I just keep on talking about all the time recently. And like I said, like these shoes that I'm wearing now are like, I find out of all the shoes, like when I'm going through different shoe phases, these are the only ones where I really like to use this full foot a lot. And then when I'm wearing like going through like a high angle phase, I won't necessarily do this. But I've noticed myself doing this so much. And that's going to lead into today's tip of the day. And it's a bit of a different one. It's not necessarily some advice on like a movement or something, but it kind of is. So my tip of the day is, also hold on, check out this cool move. So again, this doesn't seem like the setter sequence. This hold that I'm like palming on seems like a foothold, but this sort of like boulder, that, like the way I'm reinventing it, I really enjoy it. Like this is a cool sequence. Come on, you have to like go down to this little volume and then use this sort of like kind of slopey foothold to press to this thing. And then when you bring your foot up, the hold that you're going to as well is not very good. It's like a sloper with like a bit of like a lip at the back. So you have to hit it perfectly. And it makes for this really cool move where you're in this shoulder move. You bring your foot up and you have to just sort of all points off, hit the sloper, and then it's really hard to reel it back in. And I found the trick for sticking that move was actually to, when I peeked my head like over my arm and sort of leaned back in order to look at the hold I was going, I found that by bringing my head back, it was also bringing my center of gravity backwards, and it was pulling me away from the wall and made it really hard to reel the hold back in. And so a little trick I actually found for this move is I had to peek underneath my arm. And by putting my head closer to the wall, it kept my center of gravity closer so that when I hit this super bad sloper, I wasn't like super far away from the wall. I didn't have to reel it back in as much. Whereas when, instead of peeking like this, if I peek back here, then all of a sudden I'm hitting the hold too far back and my body's going to fall backwards. So that was just like a little cool subtle thing that I realized in this boulder. But anyway, here's probably this attempt coming up is going to be my best attempt of the day. This was a ground try where I like almost did like a mock send of it. Like you'll see me often do this where I will like fall and get right back on a boulder to like sort of close the gap between not sending it and sending it. And that just helps you like obviously get closer to sending the boulder in the end. But anyway, let's continue with the tip of the day that I was talking about. So it kind of sounds like I'm gearing up for the tip of the day just to be like use this full foot position all the time. And that's not what it's going to be. And like I've also mentioned before about this full foot position. Also, yeah, so you can see I'm like finally making it here from the bottom. I'm getting a bit nervous, but I never actually stuck this Gaston move off of like out of this position. I've only done it off the jug. So there's still a bit of work to close that gap with that move. But yeah, so like I said, with the full foot position, I keep pausing, but sorry, this is the last time I'm going to pause before I continue with this tip of the day. I want to mention what's happening in like our program, as you can see here. So I went quite a bit over time. This boulder was really getting my number, and it was just getting under my skin. And I knew this was probably my last opportunity to try this boulder as well. And I kind of just said like, screw it. I'm going to keep trying this boulder. I don't even care that I'm like way over time. I ended up climbing for an hour and a half instead of my hour session. And I was kind of just like a bit grumpy actually that I didn't do that. I was like, got like super, my butt kicked on the project in the beginning. And then I also like wasn't able to do that white one at all. And it was like kind of a bit frustrating. And then we got to this and I just sort of like just got into this mode where it's like, I don't even care about anything right now except this boulder in front of me. And I just want to keep climbing it until I'm satisfied with it. And so obviously this was a pretty close attempt. I started to turn the impossible slab into like being more possible. So I ended up going way over time, trying this boulder a whole lot. And yeah, like I don't have any, I just sort of like wasn't able to control myself. It was probably a little bit bad. So I ended up realizing that I needed to adjust my training. And it actually wasn't just because I went super overtime on this session. So I decided to switch my campus session, which is the second session of the day, instead of being an hour to just do 45 minutes since I went so overtime in the first session today. But as you can see, I took off a day of training. So we were supposed to be doing a 3-day chunk here. Also, here you can see I finally figured out how to match the finish hold. Obviously, just climbing up to the ending there, you kind of had to cup it a bit more. So I don't know, that was cool. I guess I was able to do every move. But yeah, I took off the third day of this training block. It was supposed to be a 3-day block, so I didn't have a 2-day rest before the comp. I don't necessarily love taking 2 days off before competition, but I had to simply because of the split. I need to just give this a little bit more recovery so that my fingertip is a bit better. I hate competing in just any sort of event with like a split or like bad skin. So instead of just sort of tacking on a 3-day training block just so I don't have a 2-day rest, I'm just going to take the 2-day rest so that my skin can be fine. And it's not like I feel bad after 2 days of rest. It's just like not sort of my preference, but it'll be fine. We'll just have 2 days of rest before our the Boulder Cup in Nuremberg, which we'll be competing in soon. So before I continue with that tip of the day earlier on, as you can see, we're camping at Studio Bloc. I started to walk to Boulderveld, and then all of a sudden I started walking and I realized I don't want to like travel like an hour and a half to go all the way to Boulderveld to do the campus session on the spray wall. I just like kind of was like, I'm so tired from that morning session. I went over time. It was really draining. And so I decided to stay at Studio Bloc and just say, I'll find a way to campus on the main walls and like probably do a little bit on the wood board up in the training room as well. Just like campus around and just like do the session. It would have probably been a better session if I went to Boulderveld to use the spray wall, but like I said, I just couldn't, I wasn't in the mood for a big hour and a half trip over to the gym. I was too tired. So we started with this 6 on the comp wall that I wasn't quite able to canvas. Obviously, I can't start it from the very beginning because it's like sort of a press start. So I started it from as low as possible, and I'm like have to canvas up to this little tiny crimp, which is really hard, but it made for a cool boulder. Anyway, let's continue with that tip of the day. So the tip of the day is that, so like I was saying, I wouldn't say that the full foot position is always better. It depends on your climbing style, and it also depends on your climbing shoe. Some climbing shoes just don't really sort of support the full foot position really well. But if you're someone who says that, okay, yeah, the full foot position can feel good for me sometimes, my tip of the day is this: train your frog stretch. So frog stretch is, for those that don't know, I'm sure you can just do a quick Google search of it and you'll be able to find like a picture or something. But it's sort of where you sort of lay face down on the ground with your knees up sort of by your hips, and you're just sort of opening your hips and you're like laying in that position. You want to see how low you can go. So I naturally have like really open hips, and I'm sort of lucky, and it actually kind of runs in the family. My brother Nate also has really open hips, and he has a very similar climbing style to me when it comes to these sort of moves. Also, yeah, we just go upstairs to the training room to try this boulder that we've tried before on the wood board, just to sort of make sure that I get some physical crimping and pinching in. But yeah, I find that the full foot position also is it's most effective when you have really open hips. If you can't sort of open your hips sort of super comfortably and naturally, then your body just won't be as comfortable and stable with your foot kind of to the side, which naturally opens your hip, right? But if you have open hips and you sort of work on your frog stretch for a while, which I have, I have naturally open hips, but I've also put a lot of time over the past few years into my frog stretch, which I started moving into splits. Like I find that the side splits is a similar thing. So I guess my tip of the day could also just be to do side splits. I'd say frog stretch and side splits are two really great mobility exercises that I've trained over the years that really help me with my open hips. And the open hips is just, it's like one of my best strengths as a climber, I would say, is like my sort of hip stability and strength. Anytime you'll see me in like a frog position where I have like sort of my feet like kind of turned to the side and I'm like compressing a volume between my hips and my feet, or like in the beginning of that like green 7 that we were trying, I would start it in that position every time where I did like 2 full feet with open hips, and that just creates a really, really stable position. You can feel your hips like super locked in and you're not going anywhere. Whereas if you're kind of standing on the ball of your feet, your knees are going to be touching the wall and it's going to be pushing you away. Whereas with your open hips and your full feet position, your hips are right up against the wall and it feels super stable and you feel super secure, and it creates some really good balance. And so this has taken a long time for me to get to this place. Like when I was younger, 14, 15, my hips weren't quite like this. Sure, I had like a little bit of like sort of naturally open hips, but after working on it for a long time, this is one of the biggest level ups I noticed in my climbing, and even more so like for my slab and just like sort of volume climbing. Like that's where it really comes into play. Like having like a triangular volume and being able to like open your hips and sort of compress that, and then being able to take that position and use it in all these sort of different climbs, like I was just using on that green 7, it's like such a powerful tool, and I find it's one of my best strengths. So my tip of the day is train your side splits and train your frog stretch and really open those hips, and then you'll notice that you can find some really, really stable positions on a lot of different boulders. And I was sort of using that strength all over that green 7 and my full foot position as well. Like that sort of super low volume that we were using, I could not stand on it with the balls of my feet. Every time it kept slipping when I was like playing around with it. But as soon as I like landed it, my left foot in that full foot position, super solid. It wasn't going anywhere. It was really cool to see that. So anyway, we finally got the tip of the day off. I kept like prolonging that. And so after trying a couple campus boulders, we're trying that 6, almost got the send. I'm realizing now, like after like this training day is concluded, I didn't actually get to the top of a single thing today. So it was a nice day of struggling and fighting. You know, oftentimes recently we're like have these days where I'm like, I've also talked about how I've noticed myself doing too much sending, and that's sort of been the theme. It's like I have to make sure that I'm trying hard enough in my training sessions. And so here is a great day where we were able to succeed with that. Like I look at that dry fire. I had a lot of good try hard training today. Just naturally, like not sending anything means that I was trying hard boulders. So that was super good. And it's good that we're starting to get in a lot of like failure and a lot of trying things that are like really closer to our maximum level. Like that black boulder was really like, that's like max limit. Like when I send that, I think. So yeah, we did a few more campus boulders. I found that I was not going to be able to spend too much time on the wood board because I was just like, that one day where we went and climbed on it, I was sort of in the mood to do it because it was something new and it was sort of exciting because it was a new bit of training. But sometimes it can almost just be like something like that you do where it's like, oh, I want to go give this thing a try. It might just be like sort of like a one-time scenario where I don't actually know if I'm super like going to be inspired by that wood board again anytime soon. It's probably good to train on. Like, I feel like that's going to get my fingers strong. But I was, like, really not in the mood to go campus on that wood board today. And I was, like, more in the mood to definitely go around and, like, try to campus some boulders. But I forced myself to go do at least one boulder on that because I always try to get a nice bit of variety in my campus sessions. Like, make sure I do some super physical, like, kind of crimpy, pinchy boulders. And then also do some more movement-based stuff. So I forced myself to go get on the wood board at one point. And then we went and did a few more. Tried to campus a few more boulders at Studio Bloc on the main walls, but I couldn't quite do it. I found that this gym also as well is like I've mentioned, is sort of more technical based boulders is sort of the theme around Studio Bloc. Like they definitely have powerful stuff, but technical boulders is definitely the overarching theme here. And so I was actually really struggling to go find boulders to campus, but I found a few good ones that were fun. I almost did this white one at the end too, but it was not quite to be. I was just sort of ready to go home and shake off a struggle day of training and rest up and recover for tomorrow. And so yeah, tomorrow we're going to go do our workout and endurance. And like I said, I'm going to probably, while we're doing our workout and endurance, I've mentioned that, it can get a little boring and a little monotonous sometimes to watch the same workout and endurance over and over again. So I'll probably include some clips of old climbing footage on the screen and we can chat about that and sort of chat about old boulders that I've done. And I can bring some tips of the day to life from my archives. And so that should be fun. I'll probably do that for the first time tomorrow. So yeah, tune into that. Insert catchy outros to the video here.